Hi, my name is Jennifer Tsuruda, and I'm an assistant professor and apiculture specialist with the Department of Entomology and Plant Pathology. Today, I'll be talking about the importance of pollinators on production agriculture, as well as on our day-to-day lives. Here we're watching a short video of some bees foraging on buckwheat, which is an important cover crop, not only for agricultural systems, but also for supporting pollinators. Oftentimes, when we think about pollinators and their impacts, we think about how they impact our diets. So what we see here on the left-hand side is what your breakfast can look like with pollinators, and on the right, what your breakfast can look like without pollinators. So there are some obvious things that are missing, such as the fruits, and whether that's through just the fruits themselves, those cucurbits and melons, but also fruit jelly and the fruit juice, as well as the fruits and the nuts from the granola. Another thing that's missing is the coffee creamer. And that's an indirect benefit of pollinators through the pollination of livestock feed such as alfalfa and clover. Another thing that we like to point out is that about 1 out of every 3 bites of food that we take has somehow benefited from animal pollination. And of that animal pollination, insects are providing a lot of those services. And of those insects, bees are providing a majority. It's been estimated that the value of crops resulting from insect pollination in the United States is over $29 billion. And of that, about $19 billion of that is from honeybee pollination. But we don't want to discount that there are many types of pollinators in the world, one of which is a non-insect and a non-animal. Wind pollination is a very important factor in terms of the production of many of our crops and grains such as wheat and corn. But we do also have many animal pollinators. We have a lot of birds and bats and insects and even humans that provide some pollination services. But of those insects, we see that there is a lot of diversity, but one of the main types of insects that provide pollination services are bees, and specifically honeybees. And that's because these bees are going after pollen and nectar from the flowers as their food resources. So they're actively making contact with the flowers. So I first want to point out that bee diversity can affect yields. We've had some interesting studies recently showing this. So there's an estimated 4,000 species of bees in the United States. And a couple of these studies shows the interaction between honeybees and some of these wild bees. In the study of hybrid sunflowers needing cross-pollination for seed set, honeybees alone had a positive effect on the pollination, but when wild bees were added into the system, the pollination level was actually increased. So there's a species interaction there that leads to higher yields. In the study that was done in North Carolina looking at blueberry systems, there showed how different types of bees contribute to pollination of blueberries in different ways. And so different types of bees have different levels of abundance. So one benefit of honeybees is that you can add a colony of bees into the field and instantly add thousands of individuals. But other bees may be more efficient in terms of pollination per visit. Uh, Different bees vary in terms of when they're active and under different types of weather conditions. Some of them will make more visits than others. And again, you can have that species interaction. So really all of the bees are valuable in this fruit system, but in different ways. Most people understand the value of pollinators in terms of producing fruits and vegetables for us. And here are some examples of some of the crops that are grown in the southeastern region. But there are other values in terms of pollination services and agroecosystems. We may not always realize the impact pollinators make on our home or daily life outside of the pollination of fruits and vegetables. Another way pollinators impact our daily life is through the production of seeds and oil and fiber. So when we look at seeds, there's a value in terms of propagation, such as hybrid carrots, but also in terms of using those seeds for oil, such as canola, which is shown on the left-hand side of the screen. But also fibers are really important. So things like cotton for clothing, but also materials for livestock feed. And what we're seeing here on the right-hand side of the screen is a bumblebee foraging on alfalfa, but there's actually an alfalfa leafcutter bee that's responsible for the major proportion of alfalfa seed production and then indirectly alfalfa hay. So there's a lot of value in some of these species on raw materials. I mentioned cover crops on the title slide because they are important for agricultural systems as well as for pollinators. Even if you're not growing a crop that's dependent on insect pollinators, you can still help support pollinators when you're rotating your crops. Cover crops can be great resources for pollinators. Many of them, including buckwheat and clover, which are shown here, are important sources of nectar and pollen for pollinators. So nectar is providing carbohydrates and pollen provides protein, minerals, and other resources. Meanwhile, those cover crops are also serving as green manure and they're fixing nitrogen for the soil and are helping to keep weed growth down. And that's especially important when you're dealing with organic systems where you can't use conventional herbicides. It's also important to plant diverse floral resources for pollinators because these different plants have different nutritional value for pollinators. In addition to that, the plants also differ in their therapeutic value. So there have been some recent studies showing how different plants can affect viral infection, pathogen levels, lifespan, and susceptibility to pesticides in bees. So I really encourage you when you are planting cover crops for soil health and weed prevention to also realize that you're actually helping pollinator health as well. So we really encourage everyone to be planting more for pollinators. So while the impact of pollinators in agricultural systems is obvious, we oftentimes forget to credit the pollinators in terms of their services to natural areas. So we oftentimes are seeing different types of plants and animals in these natural systems. On the left-hand side, you can see a tulip poplar blossom, and on the right-hand side are some swallowtails, both of which were taken at Smoky Mountain National Park last year. And so it's just really important to think about how pollinators can help in propagating plants. They're also providing food for wildlife through fruit and plant production, but also as direct prey for some of those animals and by maintaining habitat for wildlife. So these pollinators can be an important and critical part of wildlife food webs, as well as serving in agricultural food security. We can also plant pollinator habitat in non-natural areas to support and encourage pollinators to come into the area. In this case, this is a plot that I planted out at the farm, and you can see it's also supporting other types of wildlife. So I just want to remind everyone that pollinator habitat can serve in more than just pollinator habitat. It can also support other types of wildlife. It can promote soil health, can prevent soil erosion and runoff, and it can help conserve other beneficial insects and natural enemies that feed on pest insects. And all of this is really important in terms of thinking about organic food production. So I want to thank you guys for your time and your interest, and I hope that I can meet you again in the future in person. Thank you.